There are things only childhood can hide, and some tears we learn to swallow way too early. The girl's name was Clara, but no one remembered that. She was the weird one, the girl with the ripped backpack, the one who never brings lunch. 7 years old, just 7, and already knew what it was like to sit alone during recess, with the noise of other children turning into silence inside her chest. Clara studied at a school where most kids came from families that had everything, except any idea of what it's like to grow up with nothing. The principal claimed it was an inclusive school, but all you had to do was look at Clara's shoes to know that the speech looked good only on paper. She walked with dragging laces, a shirt 2 sizes too big, and her eyes, those eyes that seemed to apologize for existing. One day, on a sweltering Wednesday recess, Clara sat by the trash bin to avoid the stares. She opened her notebook, sketched a crooked little house, and wrote underneath, "My dream is to live here with my mum smiling." Then a voice shouted behind her. "You stink of poverty!" yelled Enzo, the son of the businessman who owned half the city. They all laughed. Everyone, even the teacher, pretended not to see. Clara lowered her head, said nothing, but inside her, something cracked, like glass splintering quietly. In a corner of the courtyard, a man watched everything from afar. No one knew who he was. Black suit, grey beard, still eyes. Some thought he was security, others a donor. But what he did next, no one saw coming. That same day, he asked to speak to the principal and pointed at Clara. "That girl is the only reason I'm here today." Before she could ask why, he gave a half smile, but she doesn't know it yet. The principal, tight-lipped in her arrogant high heels, stared at the man and frowned. "Do you know that child?" He smiled coldly, the kind of smile that holds bitter memory. "I know her better than she knows." She kept her pose. "Well, that girl, she's a difficult case. Doesn't socialize, doesn't participate, has hygiene issues." The man turned to face a window. "The problem isn't with her." Silence. The principal shifted topics, asked if he'd like to donate to the library. He shook his head. "I just want to watch, that's all." And for weeks he returned. Every Wednesday. Dark suit, polished shoes, and eyes that never blinked. Always sat on the same bench in the yard. Never spoke to anyone. Just watched Clara. She started to notice. At first it was strange, then it felt dangerous. No one had ever taken interest in her. Not out of love, not even to hurt her. "Mom, there's a man watching me at school." Her mother, exhausted after cleaning 3 houses that day, didn't lift her eyes from her plate. "Probably some inspector." "Stay away, Clara. Rich people don't see us, they look through us." Next week, Clara did something different. When she saw the man on the bench, she walked up to him, alone, clutching her notebook against her chest. "Are you going to adopt me?" The man's eyes widened. He swallowed hard. "What?" "It's just, no one ever looks at me. And when they do, it's to hit or take me away." He gave a sad smile, like her words hit a nerve deep inside. "No, Clara, I won't adopt you, but I'm going to return you." She frowned. "Return me?" He stood up, gently placed his hand on her shoulder, so softly she'd never felt anything like it. "One day, you'll understand." That day, Clara saw him walk away, leaving something behind on the bench that changed everything, an old torn photo of a crying woman holding a baby. The baby was her. Clara ran home with the photo pressed tightly in her hand, as if it were a missing piece of her soul. It was old, yellowed, with fold marks. The woman in the picture had swollen eyes like she had cried for days, and in her arms, a baby, wearing pink, sparse hair, lost gaze. Clara had never seen that woman, or so she thought. "Mom!" she cried out as she burst into their tiny shack. "Who's this?" Her mom reached out, tired, took the photo, silent, for a long time. Long enough to freeze Clara's blood. "Where did you get this?" "At school. The man watching me left it on the bench." She didn't answer immediately, just sat down. When she spoke, her voice was thin and weak. "That woman was me." Clara's eyes widened. It didn't look like her. That woman's face was swollen, her hair down, wild, a different version of her mother, one she'd never known. "But why am I in the picture?" Her mother stayed quiet, then took a deep breath. "Because you were given away." Clara froze, her head spun. "What do you mean?" I didn't want to, but his family told me to disappear. Said a scandal would ruin everything. I was just the cleaning lady. He was the heir, the son of the company's owner, where I scrubbed floors with torn rags." The girl said nothing. The words were too heavy. "And the man at school?" she asked, choking up. The mother closed her eyes. Tears rolled down a face that had been dry for too long. "If it's who I think, he's your father." Clara didn't cry, didn't speak. She just stared at the door, as if the world had suddenly become too small to hold what she felt. The next morning, she returned to school. But something had changed in her. Her steps were firmer, her notebook trembled in her hands, and the man in the suit didn't show up. Only a letter, lying on the same bench with her name handwritten on the front. "What they did to you, I came to fix. Wait for me. Signed, E." That night, Clara slept with the letter under her pillow like it was a magic doll capable of changing her life. The handwriting was steady, yet shaky. A man trying to seem strong, but carrying too much guilt. The next day, when she got to school, the principal called her into the office, looking uneasy. "Clara, the man who's been visiting, disappeared." The girl said nothing. "He left this for you." She handed her a thick brown envelope. Inside, photos, documents. A birth certificate with a name crossed out, and another, Enrico Salgado Montero, father. Clara's legs gave out. Meanwhile, across town, Enrico stood before the gate of the mansion he grew up in, the same one where, 20 years ago, his father ordered him to erase the mistake he'd made with the cleaning lady, a mistake that had a name, a heart, and now, a voice. "You've lost your mind," shouted his older brother. "That girl will ruin everything, the press, shareholders, your reputation." Enrico didn't reply. He pulled a paper from his pocket and handed it over. "DNA. She's my daughter." "So what?" "That was buried, Enrico. Buried. She's the product of your weakness." Enrico stared into his brother's eyes with a firmness he hadn't shown in years. "She's not a mistake. What they did to her was." At school, Clara was lost in thought. Some classmates began to approach like vultures sensing an inheritance. "Is it true you're the daughter of the guy who owns everything?" She didn't respond, just looked around and saw something she'd never seen before. Attention, but not affection. It was greedy curiosity. That night, Enrico knocked on the door of the small wooden shack Clara called home. Her mother opened it, froze. Time stopped for a second. He removed his hat, lowered his eyes. "I didn't come to buy forgiveness. I came to ask for it. And if I don't deserve that, I just want to look my daughter in the eye and say, 'Forgive me for hiding you like you were shame.'" Clara heard everything from the bedroom door. She didn't come out, didn't run, but she cried. And this time, the cry made noise. The next morning, a black car stopped in front of the school, driver with gloves, tinted windows. Clara stepped out, not with arrogance, but with a new kind of silence. The silence of someone who was no longer invisible, but still felt small inside. Classmates whispered. The principal came running, wearing a smile taped together with fake charm. "Miss Clara, so pleased to have you here." Now she was Miss. Yesterday, she was the girl with the torn backpack. At recess, Enzo approached with 2 friends. "Think you're better than us now?" Clara didn't answer. "Just because you found out you're a millionaire's kid?" She looked him in the eyes, steady. "I'm still the same. You're the one who only sees money." The boy laughed, but it died fast. For the first time, he saw something in Clara he never had: courage. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, the bomb exploded. The school board received a formal complaint: discrimination, emotional neglect, psychological abuse. Who filed it? Enrico, with a team of lawyers the size of a library. "This school taught my daughter to be ashamed of existing. Now it'll learn to apologize." The principal broke into a sweat, tried to explain. "We always valued inclusion." Enrico interrupted. My daughter's name will be on the main auditorium, and every child here will have uniforms and meals, including the ones you tried to hide." She paled. "You want to buy the school?" He smiled. "No, I want to teach you how to see." At the end of the day, Clara came home, looked at her mom and said, "He said he's going to fix everything." Her mom replied without looking up, "Some things money can't fix, honey, only time." But that same day, an envelope arrived, with Clara's name written by hand, inside, an invitation to a gala dinner. It was official. She now had a name, worth more than gold, but she didn't yet know the price it would demand. The ballroom was bigger than anything Clara had ever seen. Chandeliers hanging like jewels from the ceiling, waiters gliding with silver trays, and people smiling with their teeth, but with cold eyes. Clara walked in wearing a light blue dress borrowed from one of Enrico's rich nieces. The fabric itched, the heels hurt, and her soul trembled. At the entrance, a security guard asked, "Name?" She stuttered, but before she could answer, Enrico appeared and gently placed his hand on her back. "Clara Montero, my daughter." The room froze for 2 seconds. Then whispers began. Some looked at her with pity, others with disdain, but none with affection. At the table, Enrico's uncles tried to keep up appearances. "She seems well-mannered," said a jeweled lady. "Yeah, for someone who came from nothing, she's not that scary," added another. Clara pretended not to hear, but every word cut like an invisible knife. During dinner, the waiter offered wine. Clara politely declined. Enzo, yes, he was there too, son of the family's business partner, snickered. "She doesn't drink, must miss tap water." The laughter was stifled, but it was there. Enrico glared at the boy. "You'll learn to shut up, kid." But Clara stood up from the table. "No need, Dad." It was the first time she called him that. "I'm not ashamed of the water I drank, or the floor I cleaned with my mom." The hall went silent. "If you've got a problem with that, then the problem isn't me." And she left. Just like that. Outside, rain had started to fall. Clara stood alone under the awning, looking at the sky, whispering, "Why does it feel like the higher we climb, the harder it is to breathe?" But she didn't stay alone for long. Across the street, a familiar figure approached. The teacher, the same one who pretended not to see the bullying at school. "Clara, can we talk?" The girl just stared, waiting. "I know I messed up, but you need to know something about your father." Clara's stomach turned. "What about him?" The woman took a breath. "He didn't look for you by chance. He was pressured, and I helped cover it up." She shrank under her umbrella, her eyes blinking fast, like she was trying to find courage in the raindrops. "When you were born, Clara, your father knew. He knew from the beginning." Clara frowned, her voice trembling. "But my mum said he was forbidden, that the family forced him away." The teacher swallowed hard. "That's true. But he gave in too easily, signed papers, took money, disappeared." Clara was speechless. The wind slapped her face, but the pain came from inside. "And you?" "I worked at the school where your mum first tried to enroll you. The principal refused, said scandal kids ruined the school's name." Clara closed her eyes. "Why are you telling me this now?" The woman replied through tears and guilt. "Because your father's money won't protect you from all truths, and you need to decide what to do with them, bury or speak." That night, Clara didn't sleep. She sat on the porch of the shack she'd called home until days ago, the blue dress hanging on a nail, the heels thrown in a corner, and her mind spinning. The next morning, she did something no one expected. She returned to her old school, old backpack, patched uniform, asked to speak to the counselor. "I want to give a talk." "You?" "Yes, about what it's like to be ignored, to be called trash, and what happens when we start to believe it." And the next day, Clara, 7 years old, stood in front of a classroom full of children. "Some of you called me poor, stinky, dumb, and I swallowed it all in silence. But today, I'm not rich because I have money. I'm rich because I survived you." The room fell silent. The counselor tried to interrupt, but Clara stared firmly. I still live in the same place, still eat plain rice when there's nothing else, but now I know who I am, and no one will teach me to be ashamed of that again. In the back, a girl started crying, raised her hand. Will you be my friend? And for the first time, Clara truly smiled. But outside the classroom, someone watched silently. Enrico, his eyes wet, but his heart trapped in a decision that could destroy everything. The Montero mansion was silent, the kind of silence that aches in your ears. Enrico sat at the head of the table, papers spread out, his face sleepless. Across from him sat uncles, cousins, brothers, all in suits, all with that smug, we know what's best for the family look. Enrico, this has to stop. Now, said the eldest, slamming the table. You're not giving the Montero name to a bastard. She's my daughter. She's a threat. The word echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Journalists are already speculating. The company's stock is dropping. Your partners are panicking. And all for a child? Enrico took a deep breath. She's not just any child. No, she's the living reminder of your shame. Silence returned, but this time it was colder, heavier. The next day a decision was made. The PR team released a statement. Enrico Montero confirms paternity, but states there is no legal, emotional, or financial connection with the child. It is an isolated personal matter, now closed. Clara saw the article on a classmate's phone. She read slowly, each word cut like a knife. The teacher tried to comfort her. Maybe it's to protect you. But Clara wasn't listening anymore. After school, reporters swarmed the gate. Clara, how does it feel to be rejected again? Did your father lie to you? Will you sue the Montero family? She ran, disappeared into the crowd. Hours later, Enrico called. 20 times. None answered. On the 21st, Clara picked up, her voice low, steady. You said you'd fix everything. And I will. You lied. Again. Silence. Clara, I was threatened. They said they'd take you from me. They broke me once. I didn't want them to do it again. With you. She answered with something she'd learned far too early. When you don't face your monsters, they eat you from the inside. And hung up. That night, she did something unexpected. She recorded a video, alone, in her small room with the fan buzzing in the background. She looked into the camera and said, My name is Clara. I'm 7. I'm the daughter of a man who's afraid to love what the world rejects, but I'm not afraid anymore, and posted it. By the next day, the world exploded. The video went viral like wildfire. In less than 12 hours, over 3 million views. Comments flooded in. She spoke more truth than most adults. 7 years old, and more courage than her own father. Clara, you are not alone. At the Montero mansion, phones wouldn't stop ringing. Partners panicking, stocks falling. TV shows fighting for interviews. But Enrico said nothing. He watched the video alone, locked in his office. And there, seeing his daughter say, I'm not afraid anymore, something shattered inside him. He remembered the day he first held Clara in his arms. A baby, behind the clinic in the back parking lot, his father waiting in the car, holding an envelope full of cash. Take care of it. We'll handle the rest. And he did. In the most cowardly way possible, he disappeared. Now, 20 years later, life was paying him back, with interest. Meanwhile, Clara walked the pothole-filled streets like she carried an invisible flag. Kids began approaching her. Mothers came to speak to her mom. Your daughter is a warrior. My girl saw the video and cried, said she's bullied too. In the favela, Clara became a symbol. But at home, she was still just a tired little girl. Her heart ached. Her body craved a kind of comfort the world didn't know how to give. And then the impossible happened. Enrico showed up. No car, no bodyguards, no suit. He knocked on the door with sunken eyes and a bag in hand. I didn't bring gifts. I brought documents. Clara stared with a hardened gaze. Are you going to deny it again? He pulled a paper from the bag, signed, officially recognizing her as his daughter, with inheritance, with everything. This is yours. But it's not what I really want to give you. She frowned. Then what do you want to give me? What I should have given you the day you were born. Clara was silent. My last name. And then he kneeled. Forgive me, daughter. If you want, I'll scream to the whole world that you're mine. But if not, I'll go back to being invisible, like you were for so long. Clara took a deep breath, and before answering, tears rolled down. But what she said still echoes to this day. The silence between them weighed more than words. Enrico still kneeling, holding the paper. Clara standing, eyes full. Her mother in the back, not sure whether to cry or collapse. Clara took a deep breath, then answered, her voice trembling. You don't need to scream to the world that I'm your daughter. You just need to stay. Enrico closed his eyes. That request was simple, but for someone who spent a lifetime running from his own choices, it felt like a sentence. He slowly stood up, tucked the papers away, and held his daughter's hand. Then teach me how to stay, because I never learned. That night, he didn't return to the mansion. He slept on Clara's old mattress, under a broken ceiling fan, had rice and eggs for dinner, washed the dishes, and for the first time, felt what it was to be a father. The next day, the headlines were everywhere. Millionaire resigns from board to live with disowned daughter. The headlines varied, but the message was the same. The man who lived under gold now lived under a tin roof. The business partners were furious. The media begged for statements. Relatives texted, "Come back before it's too late." But Enrico answered no one. Now he walked Clara to school. The same school, but with new uniforms, equal for all. The embarrassed principal tried to justify, "Mr. Montero, we didn't know. I didn't know either. But now I do, and I'll be watching closely." The school changed. Clara's classroom was renovated. The library got new books. And at the front entrance, a plaque in golden letters, "Clara Montero Auditorium, so that no child feels invisible." Clara read the plaque, eyes full of tears. "Will it last forever?" Enrico replied with a genuine smile. "Pain doesn't, but what we do with it does." That afternoon they walked home hand in hand. On the way, they saw a boy alone on the curb, worn-out shoes, torn backpack. Clara knelt down and asked, "Hey, you okay?" The boy just nodded. Enrico asked, "Well, what's your name, son?" "Caio." Clara reached out her hand. "Come with us." And in that moment, something was born. Because when pain becomes a bridge, a new family begins. Caio began visiting Clara's house like a sacred space. Sat on the floor, ate slowly, thanked for everything. At first, he barely spoke. Then he smiled. Soon, he called Clara's mom Auntie. The neighborhood noticed. "Now they're adopting kids too. Is this turning into a daycare?" Clara heard it, but didn't care, because now she understood. People who don't love have no idea the value of those who love deeply. Enrico watched it all with misty eyes. Every gesture Clara made was a slap to the man he used to be. That girl taught more in silence than any book in the mansion's library. And then he made a decision. He gathered Clara, Caio, and Clara's mom in a makeshift circle on the small living room floor. "I own some land, a big one. I always planned to build luxury apartments, but now I want to do something else." Clara looked curious. "What?" "A school, and you three are going to help me." Her mom smiled with teary eyes. "A school?" "Yes, a school where no one is ashamed of where they come from, where uniforms don't hide pain, but also don't expose poverty, where talent matters more than a last name." In the months that followed, the project came to life, and every wall of the new school carried a story. The library held books chosen by Clara. The kitchen served simple meals, made with dignity, and above the entrance painted across the wall, "Here, no one is born invisible." The inauguration drew reporters from across the country. Enrico declined interviews. Clara spoke into the microphone, her voice steady. "This school wasn't built by a rich man. It was built by a man who finally learned what it means to miss a hug." In the crowd, Caio smiled. Clara's mother cried. And Enrico looked to the sky, as if thanking God for a second chance. But after the event, something unexpected happened. An envelope, no sender, left at the school's front desk. Inside, an old photo, a baby, an adoption paper, and a note with 4 handwritten words. She wasn't the only one. The envelope was thick, the photo aged, as if it had been hidden for decades. Clara stared, confused. The baby in the image wasn't her. The clothes were different. But the eyes carried the same emptiness. The note said just 4 words. She wasn't the only one. Clara took it to Enrico. As he looked at it, his face went pale. Where did this come from? Someone left it at the school's front desk. He took a deep breath, sat down like he'd been punched in the gut. I think I know what this is. Clara stepped closer, her heart pounding. Do you have more children? Enrico slowly shook his head. Not me, but my family, my father. The room went quiet. Clara's mother, listening from the corner, asked, You mean my father did this before? Many times, with maids, with staff, with women no one would believe. Clara shuddered. Enrico walked to a shelf and pulled out an old binder. Old documents, contracts, anonymous donations, hidden records. He had a network of silence. Money that vanished from the company ended up in clinics, lawyers, notaries. You knew? Clara asked, her eyes filling up. I suspected. But when it happened to me, I thought it was different. I thought they were too harsh. I didn't realize I had also become complicit. His hands trembled. This is just the beginning. In the days that followed, Clara and Enrico began to investigate. They spoke with former staff, searched through archives, and every door they opened revealed more stories of erased women, hidden babies, silenced promises. Clara looked at it all and felt anger, pain, disgust. How many children were erased? Enrico whispered. Maybe dozens. That's when Clara spoke with the same strength of a girl once ignored at recess. We're going to tell everything. Clara, we're telling everything, Dad. If we're going to start over, then it has to be from zero. And that night, she wrote the first line of what would become a book. Title, The Invisible Children, The Inheritance of Silence. But she didn't yet know. Someone else was watching from above. And this exposure would awaken a dangerous shadow. The book was still a draft, but just one paragraph posted online lit up the internet. A single line, speaking of silenced mothers and forgotten children, was shared thousands of times. Stories poured in. Clara received messages from dozens of women. My mother worked for the Monteros in 1997. She got pregnant and vanished. My brother has no father on his birth certificate. Grandma always said he was the boss's kid. My story is just like yours, only the neighborhood is different. It was as if Clara had touched an old wound, one no one dared to reopen. But where there's truth, there's resistance. And the system began to react. First came the subtle warnings, a crumpled note in her backpack with magazine-cut letters. Stop digging, girl. Then anonymous calls to Clara's mother. Do you know what your daughter is getting into? This will end badly, for all of you. At school, the air grew heavy. The once smiling principal no longer made eye contact. One muggy morning, Clara walked into the bathroom and found the mirror smeared with red dripping lipstick. Whoever disturbs ghosts becomes a target. Clara locked the door, stared at her reflection, and felt a chill. But she didn't cry, didn't run. She grabbed a paper and wrote the phrase down. Later, she showed her dad. Enrico turned pale, went to an old safe in his office. Inside, papers, receipts, photo albums, and a black binder with the Montero family crest on the cover. My father said this was just old accounting, but now I see. They began opening the files, and with each page, the truth hurt more. Photos of babies, notes, proof of monthly deposits, a folder marked in red, cases closed. But what did closed mean? Forced abortions, illegal adoptions, hush payments. One file showed a woman's photo with her face blacked out and a note, instructed to leave the state, payment made, receipt signed, no consequences. Clara's stomach turned. Dad, this is human trafficking. Enrico sat on the floor, pale. For the first time, he looked completely lost. If we go through with this, Clara, we'll be up against powerful people. People who've never paid for anything. She replied with a calm but steady voice. We're not on the playground anymore. Either we flip the game, or they keep laughing while we swallow the pain. The next morning, the school gate was spray-painted. Lies have names, but truth dies fast. And for the first time, Clara felt afraid. But what she didn't know was that someone from the past was returning. Someone who had been silenced too, and now was ready to speak. That morning, the school's mailbox brought something different. A brown envelope, no return address, with a single typed page. It wasn't a threat, it wasn't a complaint. It was a message. I know what his father did. I'm ready to talk. Signed, Maria das Dores. The name was common, but Enrico froze. Clara noticed. Dad, do you know her? He took a deep breath, eyes fixed on some invisible point on the wall. She was my mother's nanny when I was a child. Later, she worked in the company's kitchen. Then she disappeared. Disappeared how? One day they said she went back to the countryside, but I always doubted that. Clara picked up the envelope, her eyes blazing. We're going to find her. 3 days later, father and daughter were on a bus heading to a forgotten little town in the countryside. Dirt roads, thick woods, sticky heat. At the end of the route, a simple shack, cracked walls, and an old woman rocking in a chair. Maria das Dores. The woman's eyes widened. She didn't move. We're not here to cause trouble, said Enrico, using the gentlest voice he could muster. I know who you are, she replied without getting up. The boy who became the boss, and the daughter born from what he didn't have the guts to face. Clara stepped closer, carefully. You know what happened, don't you? The old woman stared deep into Clara's eyes. Then she spoke. I know what happened to the mothers. I cleaned their blood. I saw who carried out babies in bags. I buried stories that should never have existed. Clara felt ice crawl through her veins. Enrico dropped to the ground. The woman continued. Your grandfather ruled through silence. He didn't pay to cover things up. He erased. The mothers disappeared. The children, no one knows. Why did you stay quiet? Clara asked. Because they threatened my granddaughter. A girl just like you, Clara. Dark skin, curly hair, quiet eyes that cried in silence. She pulled a photo from her pocket. The same baby from the earlier envelope. This one escaped but vanished into the world. Enrico stood. Do you have proof? I have everything, recorded, stored. I knew one day someone would be brave enough to tell the truth. She pointed inside the shack. It's all in there, but if you take it, there's no turning back. Clara stepped forward. There's no turning back anyway, and walked in. Inside the shack, time felt frozen. A wooden trunk filled with tapes, photos, notebooks, old recordings. Every item was a scream that was never heard. Clara picked up a tape and played it on a dusty old player. A shaky, desperate woman's voice came through. They told me if I talked, I'd never see my daughter again. I agreed. I agreed because I had no choice. It was a confession, one of many, dozens of testimonies, with names, dates, locations, payment amounts, and even a diary written by a girl who disappeared after exposing her pregnancy. Enrico was in shock. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know all this. Maria das Dores placed a hand on his shoulder. You knew enough to suspect, but now you're choosing to see. And Clara? She didn't tremble, didn't cry. She typed, eyes locked, fingers hitting the keyboard like she was writing in the blood of the forgotten, turning each piece of evidence into a page, each name into a memory. Weeks later, the book was released, not through a big publisher. None dared touch it. But online, free. PDF, The Invisible Children, The Inheritance of Silence. Read by over 10 million people in a single week. The impact was massive. The justice system, federal police, public prosecutors, powerful people were subpoenaed. Once untouchable names now made headlines as under investigation. Clara's school became a symbol. The plaque at the entrance was expanded, now with a new phrase: "When the voice of a child echoes, the world learns to listen." One sunny afternoon, while Clara helped Caio with homework, Enrico arrived with an envelope. Inside, an official document. "It's your inheritance, Clara. What I have left." She looked at it, but didn't open it. "That's not my inheritance, Dad. Mine is in the kids who now have names, the mothers who can't be erased, and in you, who chose to stay." He smiled, quietly. "And your inheritance, Dad, is learning to love without hiding." That night, a group of children gathered in the school auditorium, all with similar stories, similar pain, but now, with names, with notebooks in hand, and a future ahead. Clara stepped on stage, took the microphone. "Some people are born invisible, but no one was born to live erased." Silence. Then applause. Applause that washed the soul. A final chapter? Maybe. But like Grandpa Rich always says, some stories end just to start the right way. So, what did you think of this tale? If it hurt, it's because it touched what no one dared to touch. If it moved you, it's because deep down, you also believe that love can't be bought, but dignity must be guaranteed. Drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe, because here on Grandpa's porch, there's always room for one more story that gives you chills. See you next time.